This time on Between the Wheels.
This car's your passion. You know, you're just a regular guy here, you're living here in the suburbs. I don't think anyone knows there's a 70 Monte Carlo with a big block in there that races on the weekend, and that's what drives you.
Went and got a blood test. Next thing you know, I'm in hospital.
Like, you're a form of cancer. It's an incurable form of cancer. Now, mind you, it's controllable.
Try to do what you can because life is short and you never know when that Grim Reaper is going to come to your door.
It's supposed to just stay stock. Things kind of snowballed out of control.
This looks like the General Lee on steroids.
We wanted to know who was the fastest. So yeah, let's race.
I couldn't afford to walk out and buy one unless I started dealing meth or something, so I just built the thing myself.
A lot of money spent on cars. Don't want to go there because the wife will have an opinion.
We come from a different era. We were a little bit more rebellious.
This is a strong engine. This thing is fast.
They went to start it up. All hell broke loose.
The whole thing was in bare metal. Never sprayed metal flake a day in my life.
It's powerful enough to get me in trouble.
If they didn't have the rivalry, none of these cars would have existed.
I cannot imagine recreating that time at all.
All right, we're here with Kris and his 1970 Monte Carlo. This car is kind of a drag racing legend in a way. In Ottawa, you've been racing this thing for a long time here, since the early 2000s. We saw you in action at Luskville earlier this year, and unfortunately, it just didn't go your way.
Oh, for sure. I had some issues. There was a lot of work, a lot of effort, and it was disappointing, but unfortunately, that's the way this sport works. You have to have resiliency or nothing's gonna happen.
The thing about this car, what's really cool about it, this car's your passion. You know, you're just a regular guy here, you're living here in the suburbs, you're a dad, you're a father, you're keeping this sport alive, which is something that's really hard to keep alive these days with our economy and the way everything is and the way everything's going. But here you are, you got, you know, this garage here, your car's in there. I don't think anyone knows there's a 70 Monte Carlo with a big block in there that races on the weekend, and that's what drives you.
Yeah, for sure. Like, we were at a local car show and a lot of people didn't know this car even existed, but a lot of blood, sweat, and tears have been shed in that garage. Yeah. But you just have to have, as we talk about, resiliency and keeping with things, because this sport can break your heart in a minute. That's right, it can. And to get to this point, when you got this car first, it wasn't like this. Like, tell us the story about the car and how you got it in the first place. I actually had a 79 Monte Carlo that I bought back when I was 17. That got bought and sold pretty quick, and I bought a 68 Pontiac Beaumont. It looked good, but once we started taking it apart, it had some major rust damage. But the thing about it is it had a 468 cubic inch big block Chevy that was built by West Carleton Automotive, specifically Larry Slaxton. So when we salvaged that, we put it in this, made it go. From North Carolina, it was still like a 30-year-old car with a lot of dents and some rust, but it was nothing compared to something up here. So this car was in rough shape. If you look at it, you would say definitely it was in rough shape, but it was solid in terms that you could save it.
For that time, it probably would have been considered pretty rough because there was a lot more cars available back in the early 2000s. But you got the car, so the car was brought up here to Canada from North Carolina.
Now, the actual restoration of this was done by my friend Steve mostly, so I just want to thank Steve. I know you're out there. We took it right to bare bones. We got it in the place it is today.
Basically, you got into a race car. What was it like taking on the track the first time? Because you got a crazy time when you went out there.
Certainly did, Max. Went with my sister and her husband. They videotaped it even. Right off the bat, this thing went at 12.8. 12.8 at over 100 miles an hour. That's the first time out to the drag strip. With a actually fairly mild big block Chevy with even peanut port heads, some used converter and 373 gears out back. So right off the bat, I'm in the 12. So that's kind of cool.
And for that time, like, you have to think about it. This is the early 2000s we're talking about here. That's a long time ago, you know what I mean? So for that time to get those times for your first time is amazing to begin with. It's a big job to build these cars and put the work in, and you do everything yourself, like you said, right there in the garage. Yeah.
It's all done by me, an 18 by 19 garage with a rough floor, a little construction heater when it's really cold out. Yeah, it's a lot of it. I mean, I have to give credit to obviously my friend Steve, who did most of the restoration, but I did all the mechanicals after. I'm the kind of working class guy that's just making it work and doing what you can, because we all have that love for the sport and hobby, and that's me.
That's right. But also at the same time, you're also a father. So what's it like being a father and, you know, taking care of your boy and still having this hobby?
My boy and I, we do go in the garage, sometimes do stuff. It's definitely a balance in time, because I'm just basically trying to fit stuff with the car and then do stuff with him. And he may or may not be in the cars later. I've taken him to some races, so I'd love for him to be in a junior dragster, but it might not be what he's into, but we do enjoy our time together. So
the thing is, at the same time, when you were kind of rebuilding this thing in order to run again, you were rebuilding yourself, because you went through something much, much bigger than that.
Yeah, Max, last year at the end of July, I was starting to get a blurry eye. Went to my optometrist, and she said, there's something else going on here. Your eye shouldn't be that bad at the back of the retina. Went and got a blood test, and next thing you know, I'm in hospital. I was diagnosed with a form of lymphoma called Waldenstrom. I ended up basically staying there for like a week. Yeah, I found out I had a cancer. And you know, it's your faith, your family, and whatever gets you out of bed, what gets you going. And luckily it was cars. And I remember my friends visited me at the hospital, and I told them, look, I'm gonna take this thing out one more time, I'm gonna mash it. I think you just have to have that drive, that thing that gets you out of bed, because you know, I really feel bad for those people at the hospital with worse forms of cancer. It doesn't necessarily have to be cars, you could be a travel bug, you could be something like that, but you really need that thing to get you out of bed, because if you just give up and you have a bad form of cancer, it's really bad. So to be honest, I was very lucky. I only spent a week. Some people are there for months. This was on the 5th floor of the hematology clinic at the Ottawa General. Just got to say thanks to Dr. Fott.
That's right, and at the same time, like you're a form of cancer, it's an incurable form of cancer. Now, mind you, it's controllable, obviously, but you know, when someone tells you, your doctor says, look, you got a form of cancer and there's no cure, like that could absolutely destroy people. I think most people wouldn't be thinking about their hot rod, you know what I mean? But you did, and that's kind of what kind of got you through, you know? Well,
it's just like, let's draw back to the guy who had that Firebird, like you did that great video on him, and you know, I mean, it's car guys, right? Like car girls, or we just want to get that thing out again, and that's what gets us out of the hospital bed.
Yeah.
That's what keeps us going. I mean, you need that drive. Now, I wouldn't go commit financial suicide by going a lot of debt, but you know,
everything's going in the car. I'm selling the house, screw the garage, and the
just live in the car in the parking lot.
Like Ricky from Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, Ricky from Trailer Park Boys. Get some chicken fingers going. But yeah, I think I think it's a balance. But I think you should do it. I mean, you know, and I said, like, you'd be a travel bug and you want to go to Asia. You know, like. Try to do what you can, because life is short and you never know when that Grim Reaper is going to come to your door.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's pretty cool. You're keeping the Grim Reaper away, and with the form of this 1970 Monte Carlo, and it's got one serious engine there. You know what? We got to flip around here. We got to take a look at the engine, because you don't have the same engine in there. You certainly don't have what would have came stock. You got something much more badass, I could say. Let's take a look there.
Cool, man. Yeah, this is a 565 cubic inch big block Chevy. The short block is from Shafroth. It has square port iron heads. Like, that would have been something you would have found in a GM crate engine in, say, the 80s or something. So that if there's one constriction on it, it's the cylinder heads. Okay. It's got a big roller cam, a 1050 Dominator. It's been gone through by Seabird Performance, a big Rodex intake, and it's approximately 700 horsepower. Now, I know that because I weighed the car. This car weighs 3,840 pounds. It goes about 104 miles an hour in the 8th, so it's approximately a 700 horsepower car. Probably, maybe it might have 600 or 700 foot-pounds. It's hard to tell. It's actually more of a RPM engine, because with the camshaft being so large and so much duration, a lot of the power is made over 6,500 RPM.
Okay, so what do you shift at? What's your rev limit?
6,800.
Okay.
So it shifts high, and that's also because the stall converter is very, very slippery.
Okay.
It's really loose.
In this case, you're actually shifting higher because of the cam, you said, and having the duration.
The cam horsepower is actually torque at a much higher RPM. In order to gain that, you have to rev this engine up, right?
Yeah.
So like a pro stock car or something, which is nuts, which this guy used to run, they're revving at like 8,000, 9,000.
Wow.
And you're trying to keep all this together, the valve train, think how fast, like the actual rotating assembly is going like ultra fast. It's mind-boggling.
It is, absolutely. So obviously we can't do that with, you know, just us regular people. But that's still pretty high revving engine, and you're still getting a crazy time, and you've done all this by yourself. And you get some really impressive times in terms of, this is a big car. Like, this is not a small car, you know what I mean? To run those type of times with this setup is actually quite impressive. And the fact that you don't do this all the time, like, you know, this is a weekend thing, you know what I mean? I know you've put a lot of work into this. You know, I felt for you when you took it out on the track after all that time and it didn't work out for you. But I'm just dying to see you back on the track again, doing what you love, because you have made some changes. What changes did you make?
So I've since changed to another ignition box. I bought off my friend Patrick Allaire, and it was actually from one of our friends who passed away named Kris Collins. So Kris Collins is always in the car with me. We were friends, we were drag racing friends. Unfortunately, he passed, so that's his old ignition box. I changed to another coil, and Attila had a good point of going under the distributor and ensuring that the wiring was loose. And there was some wiring that was maybe a little loose, so but anyways, I've changed all of these components in anticipation of running much better.
Okay, that's really cool. So you kind of dialed some stuff in. Obviously, we won't know till you get it on the track, but at the same time, you know, it is a labor of love. There's a lot more defeats than wins when it comes to this kind of hobby, both financially, physically, and mentally. You know what I mean? Like, it takes a lot to do this kind of stuff. But, you know, like you said, resiliency. Now, obviously, we can't go far driving this thing. You know, you only got one seat, so basically, you have a full setup in here. You have a roll cage. You have it set up. This is an actual drag car. This is a race car. I can't go inside of it, unfortunately. But you know what can go in it? The cameras, and that's what they're gonna do. So we're gonna take this thing now, we're gonna take this on the track, and I wanna see this thing fly down the road, and I'm praying for you that everything holds together after, you know, all that hard work.
Yeah, let's see what happens. A lot of hard work, dedication.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. Kris, man, that was freaking awesome. It's so cool to see you out with Monte and just flying down the track, doing what you love to do, living life to the fullest. You know, all that hard work finally paid off. You actually hit a personal best on the track there.
Yeah, the car ran a 648 at 104 miles an hour. So that's like a low 1030 in the quarter. Like this big lady is moving.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty fast. Congratulations again.
Well, thank you, Max, and thank you for everything you do.
Absolutely. Oh, no worries, man. And like with anybody in the show, you deserve your very own hat. So there's your Between the Wheels hat. Your story's now been shared, and thank you for sharing your story, your history, and kind of giving people a look into what kind of fight you have to go in with life, whether it's something medical or with a car in general, just keeping positive. And anything else you want to say, people, before we go?
I just want to say thanks to all the people who've helped me over the years. First of all, Steve with the bodywork. Second, my neighbor, Glenn, down the road. He's helped me out a lot. And of course, my good friend, Ed. And, you know, I'm forgetting people, but, you know, my friends along the way have helped me out a lot too, my good friends, even just helping put stuff in storage. So, you know, it's like that Joe Cocker song. You get by with a little help from your friends, and it's not all me.
That's right, absolutely, and that's what it's all about. That's how the core community is held together. We'll see you guys next time.
Next time on Between the Wheels.
No, this car is trying to kill you, I think, at any point. Height of COVID, so we were stuck inside. My wife and I were like, what are we doing? So let's build something. But yeah, this has gone completely overboard.